Looking for some new ways to get creative in your sketchbook? You're in the right place because today I'm going to show you how to use bubbles to create fun sketchbook spreads that you can look back on and be proud of. I apologize in advance because this is really messy. Welcome back. I'm Christine and this is Mike. And Mike is here to remind us that art is fun. So grab your sketchbook and get ready to have fun creating your first acrylic painting spread using bubbles. I'm going to be using 2 plastic cups and some Liquitex Basics acrylic paint. I'm only using a tiny bit of paint and then I'm adding a little bit of Dawn dish soap and a splash of water. How much water you use depends on how dark you want your bubble color to be. It's a little hard to give an exact measurement because it also depends on the type of paint that you're using, but I will put my recipe in the description box below. I want to try something new for this first sketchbook idea. I've seen people use crayons as a resist with watercolor, so I decided to try it here. I grabbed a white crayon and started to draw on the paper before putting my bubbles down. I quickly realized that it's hard to see white crayon on white paper. I was scribbling snowflakes for a bit and I couldn't see anything, but I was hoping for the best. Then I took some bubbles with my hand and I placed them on top and immediately saw that the crayon wasn't showing through, which was a little disappointing, but it's okay. This is the whole point of this first exercise. I am assuming that you have never painted with bubbles before, so this first exercise is all about trying new things, maybe something you've seen with watercolor, and to just put bubbles to paper. If something doesn't work like my crayon resist idea, it's okay. This is meant to get you out of your comfort zone and to try something new. You can see the crayon a little bit in a couple of the spots, but I decided to just move forward. I grabbed a couple of other colors and I just started to color on top. I really liked how icy and chilly this page looks. These bubbles reminded me of ice, so I outlined them and added more color, and I just experimented and had fun. Think of this as your introduction to bubbles. What do they make you think of? What do they inspire you to create? It doesn't have to be complicated, and once you're happy with it, turn the page and let's move on to the next idea. For the next spread, I decided to turn my sketchbook vertically. A while ago, I did a commission. It was these beautiful bubble women. This commission was for a simple fashion portrait where I paint the head, arms, and legs and part of the dress, and then I fill in the rest with bubbles. This idea is so versatile and you can apply it to all kinds of concepts. It's easy to let the bubbles inspire you and just think of what you can turn them into. In this case, I thought using them for the dress would be fun. Since I've done this idea before, I wanted to experiment with it again in my sketchbook and just show you how fun and creative you can get with this. I used multiple layers of color when I was filling in the dress with bubbles. I kind of wish that I stopped with the first layer, but I was in the mood for experimenting and I just got so sucked into it. Make sure you let each layer dry before adding an additional layer of color, because if you don't, you'll end up with one blob of color instead of multiple bubble textures on top of each other. You could fill an entire sketchbook doing all kinds of variations of this. I'm focusing on defining the dress, adding more details to the face and hair, and pulling everything together into this cute fashion portrait. I love this, and you'll be seeing more of this from me in the future. For now, let's move on to the next idea. This next idea is all about letting the bubbles inspire the image. I'm lightly drawing with my pencil to create a sea wave shape, and then I'm going to come in with my bubbles and lay them down in such a way that they will resemble the shape of a sea wave. When you're using this technique, you can let the bubbles overflow from your cup onto the page, or you can apply them with your hand like I'm doing in this video. I personally find that applying the bubbles with my hand gives me the most control. It's still unpredictable, but at least I know where the bubbles are going. After I finish the first layer of the bubble art, I like to pause for a moment and really sit with what I've made. Not to judge it, not to decide if it's good or bad, but just to look at it. This quiet little pause usually tells me what should happen next. It felt right to add another layer of bubbles before moving into the final painting. I didn't plan it ahead of time, I just let the process guide me. When I start painting the sea wave, I build it slowly, matching the colors and the layers from the bubble background with my acrylic paint. I took my time and I let my paintbrush dance along the page. I added a lot of layers, I added soft edges, and I reflected in that quiet space that only exists when I'm working in my sketchbook. These are some of my favorite moments. Just me, the materials that I love, and the freedom to experiment without pressure. Once I'm happy with the acrylic layer, I come back in with colored pencils. At this point, I've collected quite a few pencils. I have Artex, Prismacolored, I even have some Meeden colored pencils, and I use them all together. I've learned that it doesn't really matter which brand I reach for. What matters is the color I need in the moment and how it helps me express what I'm feeling. I have a couple of secret weapons when it comes to mixed media, and my first one is this white gel pen that I use for highlights, and my second one is a purple gel pen for darker areas. I hardly ever use black anymore. Sometimes it's necessary, but I find that a darker purple usually works better for me because the purple is more harmonious with the blues and the pinks that I'm already using. It ties everything together in a pleasing way. For the next spread, I thought the bubbles would make perfect clouds, so I placed them in a way that felt puffy and soft, and I even dragged some of them across the page to stretch them out a bit. I've never quite understood how to paint clouds, even when I sit down and I study them. For some reason, I always confuse the shadows and the highlights, and I forget that there are no hard lines when creating clouds. Everything should be soft. This is all about experimentation. So if your clouds don't look like clouds and they look kind of like whatever blobby thing I'm making here, it's okay. As long as you're playing with color and having fun, you're doing it right. When you try new things, you're going to fail more often, but every time you fail, it teaches you what not to do next time. And speaking of mistakes, I decided that I wanted to put more bubble texture on top of my blobby clouds, and this happened. I ended up spilling the bubble mixture all over the page, but it gets worse because the bubble mixture didn't just ruin my spread, but it went on to the next page, and it actually spread to a couple of pages in the back of this sketchbook. I tried blotting it with a paper towel, and honestly, it looked kind of cool for a second, but at that point, I was just too focused on the mess. I decided to stop and just move on to the next idea. This idea is all about using the bubble texture as a background. Your background doesn't have to be complicated, but if you don't want to put a lot of thought into it and you just want to have fun and play around and then paint on top of it, the bubble texture is perfect for this. This time, I smashed the bubbles into the page to make them darker and more intense. It was messy, but again, a lot of fun. I originally planned to paint a whale on top of this, but I ended up going with jellyfish instead. I grabbed my Derwent Inktense pencils, which I haven't used much yet, and I started experimenting. Because the bubbles already have a watercolor look, the Inktense pencils felt like a perfect match. I blocked in the colors first, and then I activated them with water. For the first jellyfish, I built up the color slowly in layers, adding more depth each time. For the second jellyfish, I just went in with blue and I added some orange to reflect light from the other one that's nearby. I also discovered that dipping the pencil directly into water creates these beautiful, dark, expressive lines, and I love that effect. I'm so grateful that I discovered the Derwent Inktense pencils because so many of you suggested them in the comments. I am so glad I listened and I gave myself the permission to play with something new because they truly feel magical. And in a lot of ways, they represent everything I teach here. Art supplies are meant to be explored, mixed, tested, and played with. There are so many ways to use a single tool, and the only way to discover those possibilities is by spending time with them in your sketchbook without expectations. Art has never been about perfection or making something worthy of display. It's always been about self-expression and self-discovery. Your sketchbook is a safe place to learn what you love, what you don't, and what surprises you along the way. It's a place to spend time with yourself, to slow down, and to listen. This video may have started as an exploration of the bubble technique, but it's also about layering curiosity, patience, and play. I can only show you so much in one video, but I hope that this inspires you to grab some dish soap, some acrylic paint, and to open your sketchbook, try it, experiment, combine techniques, make a mess, and take a quiet moment just for you. Because when you give yourself the space to create and explore, you're not just creating art, you're discovering what you're capable of. I haven't even scratched the surface of what you can do with this technique. I could honestly make a whole series just on bubbles, and I'll definitely keep sharing what I learn in future videos. If you want to watch another acrylic painting video, click the one on the screen. I share a different acrylic technique that I really enjoy, and I think it'll help you see acrylic paint in a whole new way. And I'll see you there.